On this Wednesday night, Haiti's president assassinated at home. Jovenel Moïse attacked in the middle of the night while he slept.
There's been a lot of problems, but then again, we never expected this.
What neighbors saw and heard, plus the intensifying political crisis gripping one of the world's poorest countries. A new COVID-19 variant arrives in Canada.
Viruses are always evolving.
What's known about Lambda and how well vaccines work against it. Working full-time, but only 4 days a week. The challenges and perks.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with the assassination of a world leader and a country on edge. The president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, is dead. Gunmen stormed his home in Port-au-Prince in the middle of the night. Who orchestrated the attack and why remains unknown, though he had his share of enemies. The 53-year-old became president in 2017 after winning a disputed election that saw one of the lowest turnouts in the country's history. He dissolved parliament more than a year ago and began ruling by decree. Under his leadership, Haiti, the poorest country in the Americas, plunged further into economic crisis and has been plagued by corruption allegations and gang violence. Protesters have been calling for Moïse to go for months. Earlier this year, he claimed he thwarted an attempted coup and a plot to murder him. Haiti is under siege tonight. The international airport is closed, so is the land border with the Dominican Republic. Canadian citizens in the country are advised to limit their movements. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, seen here with Moïse at the G7 summit in Quebec 3 years ago, called the killing appalling. Caught in the turmoil, though, are the millions of people in that country that have faced crisis after crisis. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight.
It was in the hilly suburbs of Port-au-Prince at his home that the Haitian president was assassinated. Armed gunmen attacking just after 1 a.m. Wednesday, leaving behind bullet holes, ski masks, and a growing political crisis. These are videos posted by a Haitian media outlet. It says they were filmed during the attack. According to witnesses quoted in local media, the gunmen were yelling, claiming to be with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency. Some also report hearing drones overhead and a grenade explode. This man says he heard a boom and felt the ground shake. In a statement to the nation, the interim prime minister says the attackers spoke English and Spanish. Claude Joseph called it a highly coordinated attack by a highly trained group. It was the interim prime minister who confirmed President Jovenel Moïse had been killed and his wife, the first lady, shot and wounded. Joseph has declared a state of emergency and is calling for calm. Now, calm is not something Haitians have seen much of in recent years. On top of the tumultuous political situation, they're having to deal with a kidnapping crisis and a failing economy. Add to that, a capital gripped by gang violence. Armed groups and police have battled in the streets for months, with civilians caught in the middle. At Montreal's Haitian radio station, the news director says the situation is so bad in the capital, tens of thousands have fled in recent months. Jean-Emmanuel Pierre says the main entrances to Port-au-Prince from the south and the north are both controlled by gangs. For Canada's Haitian community, something had to give. Tensions were too high, but most expected Moïse to flee the country, not be killed.
It couldn't continue this way, but nobody thought that it would be that.
What's been left behind after Moïse's death is a mystery of who was behind the attack and a power vacuum that could see a country go from crisis to chaos. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And a power vacuum in Haiti could further complicate its handling of a recent surge in COVID-19 cases. Haiti is just one of 5 countries that has yet to begin vaccination campaigns. Until recently, case numbers in the country remained low, although testing has been limited. But in May, infections and deaths increased 5-fold, a rise attributed to variants. Since the start of the pandemic, Haiti has recorded fewer than 20,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and less than 500 deaths. Nearly half of those deaths have occurred in the past 3 months. And there is a new warning tonight about the global trajectory of the pandemic after 7 straight weeks of declining cases. The World Health Organization says new infections worldwide are once again creeping up. Europe saw the sharpest increase in the last week, with a 30% jump in new infections. Now, in Canada, the situation is more encouraging. Case numbers are still falling, vaccinations are still climbing, and in Ontario today, a major milestone. That province reported 0 new COVID-19 deaths for the first time since last October. But despite the progress, Canada is still dealing with the threat of highly transmissible variants. The World Health Organization is urging every country to avoid a premature rush to back to normal.
The idea that everyone is protected and it's kumbaya and everything goes back to normal, I think right now is a very dangerous assumption anywhere in the world. This virus is evolving, this virus is changing, and we need to be very, very careful at this moment so that the gains that have been hard won by the behaviours and action of our population are sustained.
One of the variants of interest flagged by the WHO is the newly labelled Lambda variant, or C37. There are concerns it carries mutations that could potentially make it more resistant to neutralizing antibodies. It has been detected in close to 30 countries, including here in Canada. Our health reporter Jamie Maraucher is looking into what we know about this new variant.
As masks come off and life returns to normal, Canada's public health agency confirms 11 cases of a new COVID-19 variant.
What we do know is that it does look highly transmissible.
C37 or Lambda was first detected in Peru in late 2020 and now accounts for more than 80% of the country's cases. Now spreading across South America, Lambda is also responsible for 1/3 of new infections in neighboring Chile.
We're in this period where we're still watching it and trying to understand.
The World Health Organization says there is nothing to indicate that Lambda is more deadly than other variants like Delta or Alpha. But experts who are scrutinizing the effectiveness of vaccines to protect against all these new variants do have concerns.
The immune response seems to be a little bit less than compared to the wild-type virus strains.
2 small studies out of the U.S., which have not been peer-reviewed, found vaccine effectiveness against the Lambda strain can fluctuate. mRNA vaccines such as Pfizer and Moderna, one study reveals, should offer some protection.
It has a few rather interesting mutations that could make it actually fit, for, again, escaping vaccines partially.
Those mutations are why Professor of Immunology Omar Khan says vaccination needs to be a global priority.
The virus can only replicate in people, and every replication event is an opportunity for a mutation to happen.
A double dose, he says, is our best shot at disrupting COVID's evolution. Jamie Maraucher, Global News, Toronto.
In Australia, Sydney's second COVID-19 lockdown was extended today over fears an outbreak of the Delta variant is now out of control. Strict stay-at-home orders that were to be lifted on Friday are now in place for another week. 347 people in New South Wales have tested positive since the first case of the Delta variant was detected in Sydney 3 weeks ago. Just 9% of all Australian adults are fully vaccinated. And with just over 2 weeks to go until the Olympics, Japan is expected to declare a state of emergency in Tokyo that would last through the duration of the Games. COVID-19 cases have jumped to a 2-month high. The government is also weighing whether to ban spectators from attending. The Assembly of First Nations is electing a new leader. 7 candidates were in the running for national chief after incumbent Perry Bellegarde announced he wasn't seeking re-election after 7 years. The first round of voting has wrapped up, as is the second. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, joins us now. David, is there a clear winner yet?
No, not yet, Far. Turning into quite a race, actually. They've just concluded the second round, and we're down to 4 contenders right now, and it's a tight race. You need 60% of all ballots cast to become the new national chief and succeed Perry Bellegarde. And here's the breakdown right now. Saskatchewan chief Reginald Belrose has 32%, right behind Roseanne Archibald. She's an Ontario chief at 31%, 32-31. And then a little bit further back, another Ontario chief, Alvin Fiddler, he's at 22%. Once again, you need 60% of the votes cast. And of course, as you may know, it's the chiefs of the country who pick the national chiefs. It's not individual First Nations peoples who vote in this election, just the chiefs of the 632 First Nations communities, but not all are participating. Just 351 votes were cast in the second ballot, and we'll see how the third round goes. Here is the leader, Reginald Belrose, speaking earlier this week to the AFN convention.
But when you look at this role, it's not to divide. It's not to play games. It's not to pit region against another region. What I'm promoting is a common agenda with a united vision. A common agenda with a united vision, chiefs.
Now that's Reginald Belrose of Saskatchewan. His chief competitor, Roseanne Archibald from Northwestern Ontario, looking to become the first woman to be national chief. Here's what she had to say.
You can see the tables are turning, where Canadians are finally starting to learn what their governments have done to our people and our families. And we are gathering more allies. And with the support of our allies, we can make substantive changes for our communities. We must seize this moment and take a quantum leap of change.
And so the voters are voting right now. We'll know the results of the next round somewhere around 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll see if that produces a winner. Farah?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thank you, David. Elsa arrives in Florida. Coming up, the impact on the Sunshine State and where the tropical storm is headed. Plus, looking after aging loved ones. One family's decision not to use a care home. Tropical storm Elsa has made landfall in Florida. The powerful system is battering the state with strong winds and lots of rain, causing chaos on the roads. Elsa is now tracking north along the east coast. It's expected to reach the Maritimes this weekend as a post-tropical storm. North America has set a new record. Last month was the warmest June ever. The European Union's Climate Monitoring Service says North America's average surface temperatures for June were 0.15 of a degree Celsius higher than the average for June 2012, the previous record holder. Europe was also hit with high temperatures last month, recording its second warmest June ever. Globally, last month was the fourth hottest June on record. The EU agency says the findings further illustrate the effects of global warming. Residents of Canada's long-term care homes have suffered greatly during the pandemic, accounting for nearly 2/3 of all COVID-19 deaths. In many of these facilities, promises to protect residents were broken, and months went by where they couldn't see their family. Today, more restrictions are being eased at Ontario facilities, allowing residents to have more visitors. But as Mike Drolet reports, the pandemic has changed how many of us approach the way we care for our seniors.
If there's one thing her family could agree on last spring, it was that 81-year-old Audrey Danard could no longer live alone in her house on Vancouver Island. Her daughter Susan's home had too many stairs, and while the family considered a retirement home, they decided, amidst the pandemic, to go their own way, together, selling Audrey and Susan's homes and moving into a new house, family and all.
And I think you would have to have a family that you're comfortable with and you get along and there's no arguing, that sort of thing. For some reason, we just all click.
As COVID spread rapidly through so many long-term care homes, more and more Canadian families began considering alternatives to assisted living, a kind of generational rethink. When the Ottawa Hospital put this decision aid online to ensure families knew the risks of taking a senior out of long-term care, it was used over 30,000 times.
I certainly have heard stories in many provinces across the country where families have pulled their loved ones out of care. And it could be in the dozens, it could be in the hundreds. I don't necessarily think it's in the thousands.
What Dr. Samir Sinha says we do know is that the waitlist in Ontario has stayed relatively flat, which he says points to Canadians increasingly looking for alternatives.
So a lot of people, I think, have absolutely lost faith in our long-term care system and its ability to keep people safe, especially during a pandemic.
Seniors advocates say the pandemic may have finally spurred long overdue reforms inside long-term care facilities and resulted in something of a consumer correction.
There's a fair amount of research around that shows that about 20% of the people who were in long-term care prior to COVID didn't need to be there.
The Danards certainly fall in that category, but they also know they're fortunate to be in good health and financially secure.
For me, it was just a time to really reflect at the end of the day. You know, what do I want to accomplish in my life? And to be honest, like if I didn't take care of my mom, you know, nothing else would have mattered.
It hasn't necessarily been easy, but the decision was. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
What happens when families want to pull their loved ones out of long-term care homes? Can they return without going to the end of the wait lists? Tomorrow, Mike Drolet explores that issue. Less is more. Still ahead, a new study finds shorter work weeks are better for business. Working less may actually be more, and the key to success, according to the world's largest study out of Iceland. A 4-year study involving more than 2,000 public servants looked at the impact of a shorter work week, and it found that working full-time but only 4 days a week provides just as much pay and productivity. As Anne Gaviola explains, a community in Canada is putting it to the test.
Zora is a rural township just east of London, Ontario. It's 14 municipal staffers, part of one of the country's largest trials of the 4-day work week. They work a compressed week, longer hours from either Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday. It works out to the same number of hours and the same pay.
For those that have small children, it's one less day of daycare. In my case, my father's elderly, so that's my day. I take him to appointments.
There are challenges, scheduling meetings when all participants are working, setting voicemail and out-of-office reminders. After a successful pilot, the second phase of the 8-month trial kicked off this week and runs until October. Staff and researchers at Western University will evaluate from there and make recommendations for the future.
I found within even the first couple of weeks that my work-life balance was improved, and I was able to do a lot more things with family and in my personal life and come to work recharged.
The township hopes to use it as a recruitment tool, keeping the community competitive with other centres that can offer more money. Zora's project is modelled on a pioneering trial of 60 public servants in Guysborough, Nova Scotia.
When news broke that we were trying this 4-day work week pilot, I had so many classmates messaging me and asking if Zora was hiring or if there was any jobs going to be coming available, because everyone was very interested.
But labour experts say the 4-day week won't work for certain types of jobs. Painstaking physical labour or tasks that require intense concentration, like developing computer code, see reduced productivity with longer shifts. The pandemic has been a taste of the impact of compressed, staggered schedules on a larger scale.
Unintended consequences, some good, some bad. Well, I mean, look at traffic, right? Look at traffic. I mean, the pandemic has shown us that you get the cars off the road, you can get to where you're going pretty quickly.
I've taken calls from all across the country, from municipalities and private businesses, also looking for information on the 4-day work week. So it seems to be catching on.
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Next, the 22-year-old Canadian winning hearts at Wimbledon and fighting the world's best for a trophy. A Canadian tennis player pulled off a thrilling win at Wimbledon. Denis Shapovalov advanced to his first ever Grand Slam semifinal. He beat Russia's Karen Khachanov in 5 sets. Shapovalov's next match is against #1 in the world, Novak Djokovic, this Friday, and it certainly will not be easy. But as Crystal Gamansing reports, the underdog Canadian is ready for a fight.
22 and already a fan favorite at Wimbledon. Denis Shapovalov, the Canadian from Richmond Hill, victorious. He's headed to his first Grand Slam semifinal. But to get there, it took extraordinary resolve, pushing through a marathon thriller that lasted nearly 3.5 hours. If he wants to be the first Canadian ever to win Wimbledon, he'll first have to take down a tennis giant, Novak Djokovic, the defending champion and a legend on grass.
I think anything is possible, and when you look at the scoreboard, you know, for first thing on whatever it is, Friday, it's going to be 0-0, you know, so that's it.
Want proof anything is possible? Two rising Canadian stars made it to these quarterfinals. Felix Auger-Aliassime lost his match, but his performance at Wimbledon also establishes new career heights at 20.
I think that the thing that's most surprising about Dennis and Felix is actually their age, because players right now peak in their late 20s. And, to think Felix isn't going to be 21 until August and Dennis just turned 22, like their best years are actually ahead of them.
The two are good friends and have risen through the ranks together. In 2014, Auger-Aliassime won the Junior Grand Slam at the U.S. Open. Shapovalov won the Junior Grand Slam at Wimbledon. Fast forward to the main event this week, and it's clear the future of Canadian men's tennis is now.
There's going to be more kids that not only enter the game because of their success, but also believe in their game when they're 11, 12, 13 years of age.
On the men's side, only Milos Raonic has ever made it to the Wimbledon final.
It's a tennis match, and it could go either way, and I have full belief in me and my team.
Right now, Shapovalov has a chance to make history every time he takes the court. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
And that's Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Farah Nasser. There is more sports history to be made tonight as the Montreal Canadiens and Tampa Bay Lightning face off for Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And here's hoping these hockey moves will help the Habs. Canadian Pungra star Gurdeep Pandher is sending good luck through dance. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other.